collaboration around the digital economy global value chain. That's one aspect. By bringing together all actors of the ecosystem to do a number of things. So to develop a roadmap and to implement this technology, and to engage, to also give the opportunity to engage in multilateral and bilateral collaboration. Okay, so it's a collaborative program, but you will have at some point in time the opportunity to engage in bilateral partnership depending on the topic. That's the proposal. The ecosystem looks something like that. So basically we think that it's known, the digital economy is covering a number of sectors: agriculture, healthcare, ICT, infrastructure, insurance, finance, banking, energy, transport, and logistics. So all those sectors, they have this common thing, digital economy, on which they can leverage. So when I talk about digital technology, I mean, there is a bunch of them: artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things, and so on. So the idea is really to focus on those technology and to use those technology to create some value in all those different sectors. Oh, ça c'est un truc. So what are the components of this program? The first thing is really to understand what are the users' experience and what are the expectations if they engage in this program. So for each sector or each an industry or company, what are the requirements in terms of digital technology? The second thing is to think together about technological and non-technological barriers to adoption, implementation, and deployment. Okay? And then the third thing is to really standardize excuse me, all the technology that will be developed, so that you have interoperability and all those things among sectors, but also to give the opportunity to develop on-demand solutions. And the fourth point is really capacity building for this new, the adoption of those new technologies. I will just give the floor now to Wilfred to explain a little bit how we want to make this happen.
So we at AIMS, our primary, we're doing research, and is this really working? I think, okay. So we do research, and at AIMS Research, our primary goal is to do work at the frontiers of whatever fields we work in. So we want to do foundational research, we want to advance knowledge, we want to make new discoveries. And sometimes the discoveries we make in the different fields we work don't have any applications. But that's important, because one of the advantages, one of the ways in which you can get advantage as Africa is not just to develop technologies for today, but to anticipate what would be needed in the future and develop technologies for such time periods. So I'll give you, we work in many different areas. I'll just give you two examples of work that may not be directly applicable to you. Then I'll come back to why I'm here, why we are talking to you as AIMS Research. So we have, for example, people doing foundational work in applied mathematics, so an area of mathematics called stochastic calculus. And it has applications in microfinance and microinsurance. For example, you can risk categorize individuals based on the ability to pay, or how likely they're going to default on a loan, or how likely they're going to become sick. And so these are the kinds of applications of this foundational work. We have someone also who is doing work on quantum information science. So we've heard today about artificial intelligence. But actually we don't really have, so the holy grail is general artificial intelligence, but we don't have anything that's close to that, and we don't even know how to get there. So there are two schools of thought. One says that, well, we need to just improve our algorithms, make them more efficient, have greater computational power, and then through that maybe we're going to get this general artificial intelligence, which would give us enormous power to solve all kinds of problems that humanity faces. Then there's the other school of thought, which I belong to, which says, well, maybe there's something conceptual that is missing. We'd really lack some basic understanding of cognition. And so, but then there is quantum computing, which may shift, which may alter our impressions, our understanding of what the right path might be. So the brain, which is the ultimate machine when it comes to learning, to cognition, is really a parallel processor. And quantum computers, because of the physics of, because of certain basic properties of matter at very small scales, we can do parallel processing by harnessing something called entanglement. So there's a possibility that maybe by developing and making use of quantum computers, we would overcome this barrier to achieving general artificial intelligence. So in any case, it is going to give us a lot of computational power to solve the problems that we face. And so we have an initiative called Quantum Lab Africa, and one of the primary goals is to develop, make foundational contributions in this area of quantum information science. We have the person who is leading this initiative is doing work on so-called topological quantum computing. So there are, when you think of how you store and retrieve information, so you have what are called quantum registers, and you can arrange them in different ways. So you can have a linear arrangement, but you can have more complex topology. So it's developing theory that is using to understand these kinds of complicated arrangements of these registers. So, but these are research projects that may have impact maybe in 20, 30 years. While we wait for that impact to arrive, we also want to assist to help the people who maybe the sisters or brothers that live in our communities, our neighbors, who are facing a variety of problems. So millions of people continue to die from illnesses. 1 in 4 Africans is undernourished. So there are all these problems we want to be addressing them while also thinking long term, doing foundational work in pure mathematics, applied mathematics, and a number of other fields. So here you'll see some of the different fields that we're working in. And this gives you an idea about our human resources in terms of research. So we have 25 independent researchers, so these are like group leaders. Among them we have 8 chairs, really prestigious positions. The chairs are funding to recruit postdoctoral fellows generally, PhD students, master students. So altogether we have more than 100 people doing research across the network. And this gives you a few statistics on what we've been doing for the past 8 years. So this is Prince, who is leading our Quantum Leap Africa initiative. So we have a huge network of researchers visiting our centers, collaborating with our resident researchers. We've also trained since 2003 more than 1,500 students who are a huge resource, a very important resource that we can make use of when addressing specific problems. And in terms of computational resources, so when you talk of the digital revolution, the computation often comes into play. So we have we have 6 centers across Africa. Each center has a research center, so there are researchers that conducting research. And in some of these centers, we have access to high-performance computing resources. So, for example, in South Africa, we have access to the national HPC facility called the Lengau. So it can make 10 to the 15 operations per second, so 1 petaflops. That's about it. So it's 1,000 million operations per second, and it's made up of 1,039 different servers. These are Dell Power servers, and altogether they have 24,000 different cores. So for work done in South Africa, for example, our researchers can make use of this, but we don't even need, for most tasks, we don't need such huge computing power. Many tasks need just a few cores, maybe 10, 20, and for those, we can actually construct our own high-performance computers, because At each of our centers, we have more than 50 computers, including laptops. Each has maybe 2 to 4 cores. So already you can see we can create an HPC with maybe 100 to 200 cores. So that would be sufficient for many tasks. So even in Rwanda, we can construct a high-performance computer. And we apply this to many areas. So there's work going on in machine learning and artificial intelligence, quote, big data, and a variety of things that might be of interest to you. All right. So that's it.
Thank you. So basically, in summary, the idea with this open innovation approach, it's about cost sharing, resharing, and a common roadmap and a common vision that we want to deploy over the next 10 to 15 years. And the structure on which we're gonna, let's say, that we're gonna use to deploy this program, it's the AIMS network, so across 5 countries. And I think Wilfred has shared with you what are the human capability, the computer capability of this infrastructure. So now we would like to hear your thoughts about this approach and how you want to be engaged in that, and at which stage, which level, and so on, and any suggestion and input on this.
Okay, so my name is Barry Green. I'm from AIMS in South Africa, and of course also a link to the network. But could you tell us a little bit more about the roadmap or the idea of the roadmap? Because if it's going to be an affiliated industry program, it's going to have to connect into areas where there is demand, but where there is sorry. So what have you thought of as the steps?
Yeah. The idea is, I didn't mention that in the slide. So the idea is that around the July timeframe, that we have a workshop with all the partners that will be interested in. To have a workshop to define the roadmap that we want to, first of all, to agree on the vision, and then to agree on the barriers that we need to address, whether they are technical or non-technical, and then to agree on the roadmap that we, so basically the roadmap, we're going to build it together over the next 3 to 6 months, I would say. So it's really an inclusive approach.
What are your metrics for success?
Metrics for success?
Yeah.
I think when we will build the roadmap, there are 2 ways we can approach that. As soon as we agree on the roadmap, every 6 months, for instance, we can review the KPI, the progress that we would have been doing, and readjust accordingly. So the way we want to build this program is to have every 6 months a partner review of the work that has been done, and to readjust accordingly depending on what has been done and what are the areas where it has not been working. That's a bit, yeah.
So are you looking for producing scientific papers, producing real-world solution? You're looking to make money? You're looking to provide education or real-world experiences to the people who are going to be part of the research lab?
Normally, this type of program, you are really working on issues, on solution with an economic finality. So even though let's say you do something, you have an idea and you want to publish the outcome of your work, I think you have probably to give the researchers a lead time of 6 months before publishing, so that you have time to implement something that you want to implement before the result is published. So those are things we have to, those are mechanisms on which you have to agree. So publication is one metric, but it's not that you will publish, you find the result, because you have to have some competitive advantage before you publish the result. But the idea is really the economic finality also of the product, because you are working with end users and solutions providers. You want to comment?
Right, so your resource is spread over a number of places.
Yeah.
And of course, so you're going to have to figure out how to get them to actually buy into this project. but I think that is doable. Okay, so have you thought about things like a launch lab or an incubator? Because you've got to get people to come to you, and we've just heard in the last 2 days some incredible new ideas at some of the sessions where there have been new innovations, but a lot of them involve training instruments, so big data particularly. And so, so one possibility would be to actually use the expertise at AIM centers as well as their partners and people that are drawing from elsewhere in the world, and to have launch lab type idea or an incubator where people can start off their own businesses, but with a particular and they could be vetted. I mean, okay.
So I want to first say, so we are talking to business people here, but we are addressing problems also through government. So we talk to the governments, our researchers design potential solutions through these interactions, and then we implement. So we have, for example, a project we're going to start in climate smart agriculture. And so in these projects, we have different metrics for success. One, of course, is how are we affecting improving the lives of people, but also providing training opportunities for our students, postdoctoral, PhD, and masters, and publishing our results as well, sharing knowledge. Now, creating IP, and but not with the intention to make money, but protecting the IP to secure it for humanity. Basically, you see there are IP tends to be generated and monetized or protected in ways that prevent their exploitation by users who could create value for humanity. So that's one aspect of the application that we're doing research for public good. Now, for businesses, the metrics for success, of course, as you said, it would have to be economic in nature, and I think it has to be discussed with the business partners. And also, not every researcher at AIMS would be involved in this kind of research, because our researchers, we normally recruit them with certain expectations. And so a researcher may want to publish work, and the industry partner may not want to publish it. And so we have, one of our hopes is that through this program, we're going to create additional research positions that could be occupied by engineers who would work specifically to address problems for industry partners. And would also want to encourage the industry partners who have money, who have funds, to help us in create research labs. So research labs that are problem focused, and they could be modeled after what Barry is suggesting, so a launch lab. And also, we have limited resources. Our human resources are growing, but we can also co-opt researchers from within our network. Maybe somebody who has a great idea to address a problem that we've been discussing with an industry partner, to bring them, to co-opt them, and also they work through us to address these problems. So there are different models that we're taking here. The primary AIMS researcher is an academic, and we cannot make them do certain types of activities that they're not interested in, but we have the capacity, we hopefully will get the capacity to recruit additional people who would address some of the problems that are faced by industry.
See as being the concrete changes in AIMS's academic mission, training mission? Because everything you've mentioned so far has been fairly focused at the kind of research center level, and I haven't heard too much about do you expect that this will change the master's program to add some courses, remove some other courses? What do you foresee for those sort of things? Or demand perhaps different facilities if you're going to be moving into perhaps manufacturing-related stuff. Maybe you want prototyping facilities rather than as much emphasis on laboratory space, that sort of thing. So just what are you guys thinking in those directions so far?
Yeah, so the new problems will likely create new opportunities to train students in new topics and also in more useful ways. And the changes to the academic program, some of those changes are already happening through new opportunities that we're discovering. We are embracing research opportunities. For example, in machine learning, we're doing research. We've started a program looking at the foundations of machine learning. But then because through that, we're starting in August a program, a training program in machine intelligence, so a master's program. So the need to develop first-class research capacity in this has also informed changes to the academic program. So, and going forward, what we would like to do more in order to have more impact is to create what are called innovation platforms. So within this, so mathematical sciences are crucial for solving problems, but mathematical sciences alone can't solve all problems. So we want to embed our researchers within this innovation platform, so there will be sort of communities of practice comprising people with different skills that complement their skills. So they will be the center of these platforms, but they will. So if in climate smart agriculture, for example, you can have an innovation platform with farmers working with biotechnologies, working with mathematical models, working with people doing crop simulations. So all we have synergies among the different skill sets so that we actually have the impact that we want. So this, of course, would create new opportunities for training students, so the student doesn't just learn theory, but they learn theory and they have the opportunity to apply that theory. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I may add to that, I think we clearly give some focus to industry can benefit
Ndifon from Element AI. I'm not a names expert, but I know a little bit, and I think you gave a very good overview of the research capacity of AIMS. And now, after your presentation and the discussion, I feel I understand better that side of the story. I feel I don't understand very much yet the industry word in the project, how it relates with what is the industrial objective that the research is trying to achieve, or what is new in the organization? How does it insert, for example, inside a project like the Innovation City of RDB that I've seen across the corridor this morning? And this part of the story at this point is much less clear in my head what you want to do exactly.
Yeah. So the preferred approach, well, this is in academia, the traditional approach to engagement by researchers with industry would be individual. So it would be often initiated by individuals, either a collaborator in the industry or a researcher. They may have an idea, they discuss with an industry partner and say, oh, that looks like it's useful for this problem that I'm working on. And in fact, we have examples like that with one of our researchers who is working in Ghana, and there are several other examples. Now, this is the traditional approach. What this program is trying to do is to make it more more coordinated. So it's saying, let's talk to industry and find out what are some of their key problems. Then let's check whether we have the capacity, the human resources to address those problems. And then together, we chart, we develop a plan how we're going to attack those problems. It's essentially it.
I'm Isabel. I'm from Heineken in Rwanda. And our question is, since you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, what is the value? At the end of the day, we are a business. And I'm hearing more academia focus, which is good. But as a business, we are interested to know, okay, what can you contribute? How can you help us solve our problem? Because at the end of the day, yes, you are discovering stuff. We are interested in innovating new product. How do we win in this market? And we don't want to think of, let's invest in lab and then think about later the value. What value can you bring to us as an organization? Because we are finding that very difficult to balance, basically.
Okay, I think you can determine what the value is based on the problem you pose to us. So if you have a specific problem within your business, maybe it's in its process, a different aspect of your business, you understand the problem, you can assess the value. So when we solve it, we're generating value for you, which you should understand. That's the approach we're taking to this today. So it's not always that the business understands what are some of the limitations of their practices, what are some of the problems they're facing. So we'll have experts who collaboratively diagnose what the problems are. And once you know the problem and you can imagine the solution, then you can also imagine how much value that would add to your business.
Without investment?
No. So this is the output. This is the output part. I haven't talked about the input. So he is going to talk about the input. Yeah.
Thank you, Justin from IDRC. I just want to take a step back and maybe see where this idea fits within your existing structure. So you have your original industry initiative, which took some time to start, but now is doing very good. And then you have your newly started co-op program for the students. So where does this sit? Is it outside of the structure, or is it really integrated to the structures, and the students as well as the graduates would have an opportunity to contribute?
Okay, so basically the way this started, Charles was here who can comment, and I think it tied up to your question. Charles has been working with a number of companies here and in Senegal, and he was working on trying to understand what are the issues that the different companies were facing. And from there, we realized that some of the issues are actually transversal. They are common to all the different organizations. And then we said, okay, rather than solving this problem for only one organization and then repeating the work for another organization and so on, let's have a collaborative approach. We have a workshop, we understand what are the different problems, and we see what are the problems that we can resolve in a multilateral collaboration, and what are the ones that must be resolved in a bilateral collaboration. So it's really within the AIMS Industry Initiative framework. But then we realized that to resolve those problems, we have to build on the existing AIMS capacity, and that's where Wilfred came into the picture. That's one aspect. There is something else I wanted to say, and I probably forget. But that's actually answer at least your question.
I'll add by saying that we have, I don't know what's happened. We have a series of MOU, which is formalized partnership with industry. In that process of talking to industry, almost, I would say 90% of them, like banks, insurance company, energy groups in Rwanda, everyone say we have data, but we don't know what's happening there. We don't have a capacity to analyze data. So data was quite like, we know, that's the problem. And So our MOU is kind of a relationship between EMS and that institution. So if you read our MOU, there is an open item in the scope saying that there's a possibility to do joint research. But joint research from Bralima, they say EMS is mad, they don't get it. So it's quite very difficult for people in Bralima to sit to say it's important for you to sponsor this applied or industrial research chair. They say it costs a lot of money, I don't see value. We say we need to change the approach because they're saying the same thing, but they don't have money to find the solution of things that they're actually looking for. I think this approach say, as the last slide was, let's come together, let's talk. EMS is not for profit organization. We have a strong research department. We have other initiatives going on. If we understand, for example, just giving an example, that data is a problem, that you have data, can our researcher access your data, do some specific research on the data so that they can solve some of the problem? But to do it as Youssef was saying, that in a collaborative approach, because it will take time for EMS to talk to Bank of Kigali, do the same thing, go to Bank of Africa, because of MOU, do the same thing, go to Saham, do the same. It's like, it's difficult to do that. Bringing everyone on the platform where we say, these are vertical, everyone's talking about big data, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. These are technology we cannot ignore. Can we come together to build a platform using the EMS strong network, because we're not only in Kigali, we're in 6 countries, that we can help solve those problems. And let's agree, I think Youssef made it, let's agree about the roadmap. It's not EMS dictating the roadmap. It's not a roadmap in a specific MOU. This is a program. And together we believe that we can advance. To change that, what we have been doing in terms of MOUs one-on-one, but have kind of a platform.
Okay, so I would say that this is a think session, all right? When as the value of our program, it's turned out to be a remarkable program all over Africa, and in fact, it's proved itself internationally as well. With the industry initiative, we have to have, that's why I'm calling it a think session, because one has to have focus. If we have, if we look at, it's not for profit, but you can't do things without money, okay? It's for sure. And if you take your competitors, the world is a village. So if you, for example, are going to solve somebody's problem, somebody comes to you from one of the mines and says, well, we want to have automated systems on the ground because we don't want to send people there. Can you do the software for it? Or can you provide us with the machine, not the machine, the hardware, but the intelligence side of it? We'd have, I think in this initiative, you have to choose very careful your focus. And I think in this initiative, you have to choose your success stories. Because no one's going to pay you to do stuff if they haven't got a success story to say, I've done it and I can show it. So I think you've got to build up a portfolio, and that you can do with partners and with people that are actually friends of AIMS, who have actually had success stories and have maybe guided you into it. You want to be a reliable partner in industry, well, what you deliver has to actually mean something to them, because they're going to actually, they're going to let the lift go up, and if it doesn't go up and stops in the middle, then you're going to say, well, actually, this is not working, all right? So you've got to build a reputation. So part of what we do has got to be to build a reputation, and we have to do that slowly with particular focus things where we think, yeah, is where we can make a difference. It might be something to do with diseases. It might be something to do with immunology. It could be in a few key areas, and that, I think, belongs in the roadmap. Okay, thank you.
So we've been involved into a similar conversation in Canada, and the debate is still going on, so I'm not going to come with answers, unfortunately, but just going to fuel the conversation. One of the big area of contention is always when you pick projects and partners. To what extent do you curate for the science or the project to be absolutely cutting edge and contributing something on the science side? The problem with industry often is that they're immature. So if you look at what's available in terms of technology out there, like they need to go through, let's say, 3 stages of maturity before you're going to start really to do science. And there's going to be, you're going to face a situation where you're going to have to figure out, do we educate them? To what extent do we actually work to get them through the first stage of maturity so eventually we do science with them? So depending on the mission and how you structure this group or this cluster, I think this is something that will come out systematically. Now, you can decide that you only do science and only work with the more mature organization. Therefore, you need to curate for that. And I'll just state that it's very hard to keep it just there. So how do you deal with the consequences of working or having some of your researcher involved in projects that will not produce science, and that might be okay if you architect for it, but how you're going to play with these rules and how you're going to filter out will totally change the face of the cluster and the collaboration. And I don't think there's any right answer here, but everybody at some point needs to kind of throw a dart and say, hey, this is the balance we're shooting for. Just, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but it's just something that we've seen coming up like over and over in any research versus industry relationship.
Okay. What I can say for sure, I can take two examples because I did all my career in the semiconductor sectors, and there are two examples that relate to that. In the US, you have Sematech. It's a similar consortium, same approach. And then in Belgium, we had IMEC. The two, they had exactly the same model. What was the difference between the two? In the US, Sematech was funded by industries. Therefore, they were not independent in the way they were putting in place their roadmap. And it was very difficult for them to be competitive because they were always working on a kind of firefighting mode. IMEC was funded by the Flemish government, and therefore they had some kind of independency. So they were funded by the Flemish government up to a certain point. But then when the private sector came into the picture, they had a kind of financial stability to be able to decide on what they... So the industry was there, but they were not really 100% in the driving seat. And I think this is what will make the difference for this program. It's really whether you manage to get some seed funding or not. If you don't get seed funding, and then if at the very beginning it's fully sponsored by the private sector, then they will dictate your roadmap. And then it will be difficult to... I think that's one element I can for sure put on the table.
Yeah. I just want to add that I alluded to this earlier. So we need a mix of workers, of scientists. We need engineers, but we need regular researchers who mostly want to do science. And so whether we agree to do a project that will lead to science or not, I think it depends a lot on the project, on the agreement with the industry partner providing enough funds to secure the human resources on our side. Yeah. We cannot make our researchers do work that won't produce what they really love to do, which is science. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Sangwar Gouhi. I'm from AC Group, a company in smart transport. We were approached by AIMS earlier this year, and we're now working with their students to improve the transport ecosystem in Kigali, thinking about the queuing theory and other mathematical tools. One thing we realized, though, is that most of our business processes also depend on government and other institutions, regulators, and so on. So coming back to the collaboration and clusters discussion, I think what's going to happen is that we probably approach AIMS together with the government and with other companies. So how do we create clusters? How do we come as probably one multinational company, one startup, one government institution, creating a cluster called Smart Transport and working with AIMS. So I would just wanted to throw that idea and hear from what you have to say about it.
Yeah, so that's a nice suggestion. And so we also have other institutions and not companies or agencies, implementing agencies of a number of ministries who talk to us and they bring to us their problems. So I think it's possible, and that's really one of the ideas behind this, to identify those commonalities in the problems that different companies or government agencies face and address them together through multilateral collaborations and bilateral when necessary.
Another example in Rwanda is, okay, Rwanda is quite different from Congo Brazzaville, where I'm coming from. So in Rwanda, they have a strong association, they say the Rwandan Banker Association. So when I spoke to this organization, they told me that they have 16 banks, including Bank of Africa, EcoBank, which I actually talked to them before. So having this kind of cluster facilitates the process. But you don't have it in any country. But Rwanda is quite a good place to kind of have this kind of conversation. Because the conversation with that association was, they know what the banks that are a member of the association are facing. They know. So they can even articulate in terms of prioritizing where do we start. And if researchers are working on those problems, the solution will actually benefit kind of a sector instead of going bank by bank. So that is kind of one thing that we believe in the workshop that Youssef was suggesting. If we come together, we discuss and share more idea about it.
Hi there, I'm Bruce Bassett. I'm from AIM South Africa. I'm also head of data science for Square Kilometre Array. My suggestion would be, and a question is, you know, the easiest way to be successful is to find someone similar who's already done it and then model yourself on them. And I think, have you found someone in the world who's done something similar? And I think I know the answer, but maybe you can talk about why that is difficult. Just more generally, I think, because it's a long-term problem, you've got two problems. It's a very distributed network, right? And generally, in my experience, business people like to work with people who are in the same town. And the second thing is that we're not an institute that does just one thing. We do many different things. So I think business would be worried about critical mass. Is the work going to get done? And as Barry mentioned, is it going to get done properly? So we don't have any successful case studies, and everyone's spread out. And so I think really thinking about those problems is important if you want to crack this.
To your first question, whether there are some examples, what I mentioned just early on, it's IMEC in Leuven, where I worked actually more than 10 years. And actually, if you look at their history, I think now the company has done more than 25 years. It's fairly similar. So basically at the beginning it was a spin-off from university. And they start building those programs. And I was there at the very beginning when they built those programs. What made the program successful is it's a program that was built to enable all those, the era of ubiquity. It was in the late 90s. That's where now you have all smartphone and this type of thing. What makes the program successful is to have those big guys on board like Intel, Samsung, Panasonic. They call that core partners. And those are the ones that have been really driving the roadmap. And they actually followed a roadmap that over 20 years. And I think that's a good example. And I think if you go today on Google and you type the IMEC business model, it's something that's now published. And it's widely known and accepted as a model to address this type of long-term issue. Because I think the transition to a fully digital economy is something that will happen over the next 25 years. It's not something that will happen over 1 or 2 years of time.
Yeah, and I want to add that the initial implementation of the program will be focused on Rwanda. And in Rwanda, we're going to be building significant capacity in data science over the next couple of years. And we're not going to rely only on that capacity here. We have this free movement of our researchers across the center. So recently, for example, we had engagements with a data scientist from a center in South Africa who came to work with us on the Quantum Leap Africa initiative. So we'll have a base, a pilot in Rwanda, making use of resources here, but also drawing from our network to supplement the resources that we have here.
Thank you. My name is Dennis Rujeji. I'm from a private advisory services, green economy. We see ourselves, or where I'm positioned, as an interface between government, policy, and instruments that want to implement the policies and actually developers. For example, legislation is being put in place for green buildings. All new buildings from a certain size, all buildings have to have certain basic standards for green buildings. And also, there is like a roadmap for what we call 6 secondary cities in Rwanda to grow in a green manner, smart urbanization. So I see that, you know, sometimes it won't be necessary for AIMS scientists to go directly to industries. Maybe we, as policy interpreters for industry, for urgent on-ground issues, can play a role in making the bridge. As in fact, so I see a third player, which is services, advisory services like ourselves, in the whole network of what you're planning to do. Just a thought.
Yeah, actually, when I explained a little bit at the very beginning, I mentioned technical barriers and non-technical barriers. And I think what you just referring to is it's about non-technical barriers. Because the non-technical barriers, this is what I call policy, regulation, and all those things, where actually you need to have a kind of inclusive approach to really think about the type of issue that you need to address. Okay, so I think it's time to close the meeting. So I leave this to your thought. So if you have some question, suggestion, you can get back to us, and then we can see how we proceed with this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so again, this was a meeting to ask you whether you want to talk to us about this. Really, that's the goal. And so we'll wait to hear from you.